Hello, happy Genesis Office Hours viewers. I'm Carrie Dills, and you're listening to Genesis Office Hours episode number 34. Today, I've got a very special guest. Not only is she from the great land of Australia, she's also a web princess. How are you doing, Dee?
I'm really well. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. We're gonna get into some interview questions with Dee, learn more about her business, and see what tips she has for your web business. But before we dive in, I would like to thank our sponsors for the episode. We've got Desktop Server, who allows you to spin up really quick WordPress installs, and if you want to learn more about that, you can go to carriedills.com/desktop server. And there's actually a coupon code just for you guys, cdills-goh. We've also got the Conductor plugin from Slocum Studios sponsoring us, and that is a fantastic add-on for any WordPress theme, but especially even for Genesis themes, that allows you to lay out your content without touching a bit of code. And if you head over to my podcast page, you can catch a link for that. And there's also a coupon code because our sponsors are awesome like that and like to save you money. So, all right, let's get this rolling. Dee.
Yes.
I've seen you on the interwebs for a long, long time. You are a Genesis developer and do all kinds of cool things with Genesis. But it was only this very past weekend that I got to meet you in real life at WordCamp San Francisco.
Yes, indeed.
Nice to know you in person now.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm much the same. I've been following your progress for a while as well. So it's really cool when you can get together in real life and actually, put skin on these connections. So thanks for having me. I mean, it's just like really quick, really cool.
You betcha. Pause for a quick technical tidbit. I think we're picking up your mic again on the. Oh, I know. So we'll give Dee a chance to sort that out. But if you're just tuning in, if you use Twitter, you can send in questions, any questions you want about Genesis, the Genesis framework, or just in general consulting and running a web-based business on WordPress. Tweet those and use the hashtag GOHchat, and we'll get to those on the show. And also, if you would ever like to receive email updates to let you know about upcoming podcasts, you can hit up carriedills.com/podcast, and there's a sign-up form there. I promise I never spam you, and that's that. So, Dee, are we sorted?
I'm muted. I think so. I'll just sit really still. I'm not sure if I'm at...
If you could please not move during this entire broadcast, that would be fantastic.
This is me, like, totally not moving. It could be weird.
In right now. Well, tell folks that haven't got a chance to meet you or follow you yet what it is that you do.
I do two things predominantly. I do development on Genesis for clients and for agency, and then I do training. And most of the training is user training rather than developer training. And I have a few clients that I do maintenance and all of those kinds of things for. So I kind of spread it around to keep things a little bit interesting. But that's mostly the gig: development, front-end development, and training. Okay.
And is the training for your clients, like teaching them how to use what you've developed, or is it more general training for anyone looking to learn WordPress?
Yeah, it's been face-to-face training for anyone who wants to learn. And so I work for a company that does face-to-face computer training, and so I'll go in and we have a set curriculum that we'll do a day's beginner WordPress training. And then sometimes we'll take some of those who want to go a little bit further and take them through a day's more advanced training. But that's all user training, so there's no development or CSS or HTML in any of that.
All right.
Yeah.
What tools do you use to facilitate the training?
Now, depending on whether they're using Mac or PC, because we will do both, we'll use a local host client to do that. Most of the time it's XAMPP or MAMP, I guess, if we're using, we're doing stuff with the guys on Macs, as well as, yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll just set up a local machine and, create a WordPress instance from scratch and teach them how to use it.
Oh, so you're always training live or in person?
Real people.
Wow.
Real people, in a room like a classroom.
Ah, okay. I was thinking like a screen share, that sort of thing. But yeah, you're in it.
I've done a little bit of that, but I actually prefer the face-to-face. Yeah, I find that easier.
Well, share with me a little bit about, because you make your living full-time with WordPress?
I do.
That is awesome. In the Matt Mullenweg's State of the Word this past weekend, I think he said that, was it 44% of the respondents to the WordPress survey? Don't quote me on that. I'll get the right numbers.
I can't remember the numbers either, but there was a lot of people that are doing that.
Yeah, that actually make their living with WordPress.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of listeners also are trying to make, they're either already making a living with WordPress or they're doing it as a side job right now and would like to go full-time. Yeah. So share with our audience, if you could, sort of your process of evolving your business to where it is now.
So I went full-time as a freelancer in 2009, and it was kind of by accident. I hadn't planned on it. I was going to university for a year to finish to do my master's degree, and I had an expectation. Now our system in Australia for further education is different here, so I had an expectation that there would be more financial support than I was actually ending up getting, and so it was freelance or die. So, and that was just in the first year I just started to use WordPress, and so I had a very lean year, but I had enough contacts that had been building up in the early years before that, when web development, not WordPress specifically, but when web development was my second job. So people had started to get the idea. So I did that same thing, it was my second job, and it was in that year in 2009 where I'm like, okay, so I'm either going to have to do this or do something else. And so I just freelanced every sort of opportunity that I could get through that period, and was teaching myself WordPress as I went. And so that was 2009, 2010. 2011 I went to my first WordCamp and actually really started to connect with people and build up more connections and get more plugged into the community, and that was where I started to actually end up building a whole lot more connections, but also more people were finding me. It was easier to find me, I guess, at that point, which is where it all started to grow from there.
Which WordCamp was that, just out of curiosity?
WordCamp Melbourne, 2011, February of 2011.
All right. And you are now roped into organizing that WordCamp, or is it Sydney?
Well, I was living in Sydney at the time, so travelled to Melbourne to that event and came back to Sydney. And at that point, the Sydney community was fairly young. In fact, I don't think it really existed. There may have been 1 or 2 meetups. And in that following year, WordPress Sydney started to develop, and I started getting involved there. So I got on board there was another WordCamp in Australia at the end of 11, and I was at that. And at that point, me and a bunch of the Sydney-siders decided that, hey, let's do one in Sydney. So we did WordCamp Sydney 2012. And at the end of that year, I moved to Melbourne permanently and ended up on board with WordCamp Melbourne 2013. So now, yes, I'm a WordCamp organizer for 2013, but that was kind of the trajectory through WordCamp Sydney.
We were chatting at WordCamp this weekend, and something you said that was really interesting to me was sort of the challenges of planning a WordCamp, an international WordCamp. Any tips that you have for international organizers?
Oh, you mean an international WordCamp as opposed to planning one in the US?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Some of the challenges are connecting with the people that you need to because of time zones. So we would ask a question, and the time that we would get the response back was often later. So that's a challenge, but I mean, we worked around it. You just had to know that you had to ask your questions more in advance. Some of the challenges, I mean, we would love to have more international speakers come, but it's a big barrier to come to Australia. For a start, depending on whether you're on the west or east coast of America, that's a 15 or 24-hour flight, basically. But for us, I guess it's a smaller community. It's getting more and more different kinds of people speaking. We've got a lot of people who are well known. We get a lot of similar faces. And so our big challenge, or my big challenge as an organizer, is getting more and more people to speak who haven't necessarily spoken before. So we are keen through our meetup program to actually encourage more and more different people to get up there and share what they know.
Do you have a pretty strong meetup community?
We do. In Melbourne, we're really lucky. We have 3 meetups a month. We have a women's meetup, we have a users meetup, and we have a developers meetup. And we're lucky because we've got a great team of organisers that can help spread the load of that. So, yeah, we get sort of 40 or 50 people around some of those numbers.
That's awesome, especially that you can split it up into users and developers.
Yeah. Yeah, we did that this year. We had been having alternate months, but having 2 months in between each meetup was challenging for some of us because we just wanted to get in there and do more. So we split that up this year, and we'll run a survey at the end of the year to find out how people think that's going and whether we actually pursue that again next year. It's up for grabs.
We have a question from one of our listeners, Todd, and he wants to know the name of the company that you do the training for, and that's just yourself, right?
Well, the company is City Desktop in Melbourne, and while I'm over here in the US for the next little while, I've got a friend looking after that for me. But most of the time, I will go out as the web princess to other businesses as well and do training for them or their teams if they want that too.
And you said citydesktop.com?
I did, yeah. cd.com.au.
Oh, forgive this lazy American for forgetting about international domains. So I'll tweet that link out so that anybody can take a look-see at that. But very cool. Yeah. So one thing I love to chat about on the show is kind of finding out the different systems and tools people use. Sure. To run their business. So I want to know, are you a fly by the seat of your pants, or are you highly systematized, or do you fall somewhere in the middle?
I think I probably fall somewhere in the middle. I would love to be highly systematized, and so I have all of these tools in place. My challenge sometimes is using them. So I use Asana for project management, and one of my challenges has been getting my clients on board with that to actually help all of the information end up in the right place so that we're not dealing with 100 emails and trying to sort of scroll through the conversations to find what they actually want. I do all my bookkeeping through Xero, and that's been a big change for me. In fact, one of the big changes that I've put in my business this year is actually paying a bookkeeper and paying an accountant to do my taxes. So I used to kind of do it myself, and they do it better. So I found that was a really, particularly now that I've reached a threshold in Australia where I've hit that point where I now have to charge people taxes, goods and services tax. Anyway, it's Australian rules. So when I hit that point, I'm like, look, I can't look after this myself and get it right. So now I'm paying someone to do that, and that's a significant cost, but it's actually paid big dividends in the returns for me because now I'm, getting better deductions because somebody knows more about what they're doing than I did. So those are the 2 big things that I've done this year: instituted Asana for project management, and then Xero as my bookkeeping software, and having professionals actually handle all of that for me.
Are you using Asana just for yourself or with a team?
Well, with a team. So I have a designer that I work with, Kath, and she and I handle a lot of when we're working on a project together. We handle a lot of the task management in Asana. I have Asana set up with a bunch of areas for my maintenance clients where in an ideal world, instead of them just emailing me, that they would also email their Asana address and have all of the jobs that they want me to do as part of that contract in there. That's been the challenging part, is to actually go, I can email, and I'm like, all you just have to do is add this little address. Okay, so it's an ugly address, but add this little address and send it through, and it will all end up in the same place. And I've got maybe 3 clients who go, yeah, I can do that, and others who go, too scary, I'm just going to send you an email. And so we're still navigating that.
Okay, you don't require your customers to get in there.
Well, some of them have been with me for a long time, and I'm a little bit resistant to change, like most people. So new clients, yes, absolutely. Older clients, we're still just pushing that one uphill a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I know some folks either require their customers to use Basecamp or Red Booth or whatever their management system is, but yeah, I'm sure that can be a sticking point for users that aren't comfortable with those tools.
Yeah, that's right.
But certainly it's nice to have all communication funneled into a single location so that things fall through the cracks.
I just love having the tasks list all in one place and being able to tick it all off. I'm like, I feel like I'm achieving something today rather than chasing my tail.
Well, I wanted to echo the +1 for hiring an accountant to help out with your financials. I've been doing that for the past few years, and it's money well spent to not have the International Revenue or Internal Revenue Service showing up on my door wanting to audit me. And tax laws are so ridiculously complex that I mean, I'm just trying to do my job as a developer, let alone understand the complexities of tax laws. But.
Well, yeah, and all of that. And the other, I mean, I guess the biggest lesson that I ever learned, because I didn't get into trouble with the tax department, but things got challenging financially because I hadn't been setting aside what I needed to for my tax. So that I'll be like, oh, there's a little bit of money in the bank here, and I'll do this thing, and I'll catch that up later, and you end up getting stuck. So the biggest, best piece of advice I guess I ever got was have your tax account and put your money aside for when you're going to have to pay that come in tax time. And so getting all of that part of things, as scary as that was, going, oh my God, I think I'm going to need this money, but I'm going to put it over here just in case, because I know I will need that. Just took such a huge load off the next quarter when they're like, okay, so this is how much you have to pay this month. It's like, oh, I've got that. Instead of, the call from the tax department going, hey, Dee, what's going on here? You need to pay this off. And I'm like, And they're like, okay, well, we'll schedule it for you. And yeah, that was a rookie mistake, and I'm really, really glad that I'm not there anymore.
That's part of the learning process.
That's exactly right.
We have a question from Devender. He wants to know if there's any specific age group of people who are looking for seeking out that WordPress training you offer.
No, we get quite a broad range. I mean, the kind of people that end up at that organization for training tend to be either people that have started their own business, they've had somebody build their site on WordPress, they don't want to keep paying their developer to do their updates, they go, I want to learn how to do this myself, and so they will come. We also get people in the corporate sector who go, we have a WordPress website, we have a new person on staff who's going to be doing our content, we'll send her to you to get trained up on how to use that. And so we spend the day, so there's an incredible broad range, and a pretty fair mix between guys and girls coming along. But yeah, I've trained people that were in their 50s and 60s, but I've also trained people in their 20s. There's not usually many kind of younger kids in there, but that's kind of where they all sit. Some way professionally they need to know how to use WordPress, and so they come to find out.
That sounds about like the diversity that shows up at WordCamps.
Yeah,
you get the full age spectrum, and all levels of experience. It's kind of cool. Yeah,
and I love that about it. And I guess one of the challenges for a trainer when you're looking at a room full of people who've got a really broad range of skills, so some of them will be familiar with using, a word processor or something, and so things like the editor won't be too challenging for them, or they're not afraid of technology, and other people will go, I'm in this position and I don't really know how to handle it. So one of the challenges as a trainer in a room full of people like that, when you've got 4 or 5 people in a room, is kind of pacing the training so that those in front who go, hey, this is easy, and jump on and are basically leaping ahead of you, and pacing it with the guys who are sort of further behind going, I'm a bit scared of all of this. So that's one of the challenges of it, but one of the parts that I really like to try and fit all that through.
Do you try to group users by general skill level when you're doing these classes, or is it a little bit of everything?
Well, I don't have any control over it because I'm basically employed by the company to come in and do that training, and they sell the seats, and I mean, we do have a qualifying question, I guess, at the top, and I will ask the organisation to say, well, ask the clients, what do you already know? what do you want to be able to do by the end of the day, so that we get some, at least if I'm asking that question at the beginning of the day, we get some idea of where people are at. But again, because to qualify people who want to go, well, I think I might need the advanced training, and actually to try and qualify people a little bit at the beginning, but it can be hard to do that. And so I really never know when I walk in just exactly how beginner they are, or just exactly how advanced they are.
Interesting. Yeah, that takes some skill to juggle all of that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I have a question from Ben regarding the designer you work with, and we've talked about this in the past in a past episode. I had Emily White and Greg Young on, and they're a developer designer duo, and had some great tips for how that relationship works. But Ben wants to know, how do you guys work out the budget split? Is it kind of standard percentage or per project?
Yeah. So I'm going to give her a shout out if I may. Kath is my designer from Phase Creative. She's based in Sydney. I'm based in Melbourne. And how we do those budgets will actually depend on who brings the project to the duo. So for me, I've brought a couple of projects. I will get Kath to give me a quote on the design portion of it, and I will project manage and do everything, and I'll be the face-to-face person with the client. And so Kath will give me a figure, and we'll run that through. She'll basically contract to me. So we're not in partnership. It's not a 50-50 split. She's working for me, or in the case where she brings the project to us, I'll be working for her, and I will have given her a quote, and we will have worked it through on a project-by-project basis.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
so you're basically subcontracting to
yeah,
each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. That sorry, just made me think, how many projects do you typically have on your plate at any given moment?
That's going to depend on the value or size of the projects, so we've got, the pair of us are working, we're just about to start in on a fairly large project, which means that for me, I'll basically have one project on the go for the next month or two. I've got one or two other little basic customization projects on the go that are in the background that will keep me busy while this big project is in design. But I don't usually have too many on the go at once. And if I do end up with something that comes across the books that I go, hey, that looks interesting, I'd like to do that, then I'll schedule it, but I'll subcontract a fair amount of the work out so that it's not relying on me. And I will price the job according to that. And if the client's got the budget to accommodate all of that, then great. If not, well, then we'll just have to let it slide. Particularly with this big project, which is a multi-site, so there's essentially seven sites as part of that. That's going to keep us busy for a while. So I don't want to have too many on the go while I'm trying to deal with that one.
Sure. Oh, wow. I just had a brain fart.
I hate when that happens.
I had a question on deck, and it just fell right out of my ear.
I'm sorry.
Goodness. Well, it'll come back to me. If it's important, it'll come back. We did have a comment from Nir, who is in Israel, and I believe, and he said he would love to visit Australia and meet with the WordPress Genesis community.
We need to do so. I know a number of people doing Genesis in Australia. We haven't really consolidated that into a thing. So I know Shridar's down there, he's in Melbourne with me, and Kath, and I mean, there are a bunch of people doing it. But we need to do something to actually go, hey, here's where to find us, and let's all hang out and let's do a thing. But we haven't really got there yet. We do all talk. Some of, we back channel it online places, but visiting the Genesis community in Australia, I don't know what that would look like unless you were doing like a road trip and finding all of it, which would actually be kind of fun, I think.
Oh, sorry, I have myself muted because there was an airplane flying over. Okay, so I see a new meetup group happening, and it's called Genesis WP Road Trip.
How good would that be? We could do around the world and 80 Genesis developers or designers, or that'd be fun. I think
we should travel via hot air balloon.
Oh, come on, that would be awesome.
Just imagine the sponsor banners that we could get hanging off of that.
That would be incredible. That would be incredible.
Well, that reminds me, if anyone who's listening who is in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, on November 9th, we are having a local meetup very informal, just for Genesis users that want to get together and meet and greet, that sort of thing. Contact me if you would like details on that. All right, Ginger has a question. She wants to know, for training, have you thought about partnering with other theme developers or shops to be their handoff person?
I actually got approached about doing that late last year, and we haven't actually managed to pull it together at this point. I like the idea of it. The challenge for me is where the profitability is and whether I can charge enough to actually make that worthwhile. The big benefit, I guess, in a lot of cases for me with the training is actually getting, with the training that I've been doing for CD, has been people getting to know me as a trainer. But for me to be doing that on a much more full-time basis, even with them, isn't as profitable as it is for me to develop. Mm-hmm. So branching out and doing training on my own, I could up the prices rather than being paid by somebody else to do that, I'm sure. In a lot of cases, people don't want a whole day's training because that's not that's not cost effective for them, or they don't have the budget for that. So they'll go, hey, I want to do 2 hours, and I'm like, well, 2 hours is okay, and I can do that, but I'm going to have to get to you, so you're going to have to pay the time for me to get there and then for me to get home, and so working all of that in a face-to-face environment can be a bit of a challenge. I've thought about doing it online, and I just like the face-to-face thing better. And so, of course, I'm limited in that because I have a specific area that I can go to. So the things that I've kind of thought about in regards to this are, okay, so do I ditch the development and go full-time in training, which I could do, and travel and do all of those things to do training all around Australia? And I'm like, well, I actually kind of like being at home, and I really like my hands in code. So it's been a toss-up. Do I really want to push into this? I do it. I really love doing it, but I don't want to do it full-time. So I haven't gone there.
Great answer.
Thanks.
But to Ginger's point, I think that certainly could be an opportunity for any aspiring entrepreneur in the Genesis space.
Yeah.
That support aspect in training is huge. And to be able to hand that off to a trusted source is a...
Do you know, I get regular questions from people. Hey, Dee, I really want to learn Genesis. Can we do it? And yes, we can. And in fact, Kath and I both have talked about getting together and doing training workshops, and doing a weekend. Come in. I'd really love to do a website in a weekend from go to woe. Come to us with your content, with your hosting and everything all set up, and we will help you go from the beginning to the end. But and again, we've got lots of great ideas, and a big part of the challenge is A, we're in separate cities, and B, we're developers and we have projects and we've only got a certain amount of time. But that's I think there's definitely scope for people getting in there and doing more face-to-face training. I think it'd be amazing. And a lot of what we get asked for is not just this is the thing actually that comes up with the training that I do for CD. Hey, I want training on how to be a developer. I don't want to know how to use WordPress. I can do that. I want to know how to develop a site from, I have this design, I want to turn it into a site. How do I do that? So I think there's plenty of scope there for people who really want to learn how to do that too. And Genesis is obviously an amazing tool to actually facilitate that.
Well, if I could be completely self-serving.
Here it comes.
I do just happen to have a course on customizing Genesis themes over on lynda.com.
Cool.
You can even do, anybody listening that wants a free trial, 7-day trial, just use lynda.com/trial/Carrie Dills.
Cool.
Wow, that was just a total self-commercial.
That was
Forgive
beautiful.
me for that.
What a fantastic segue. That was just, I'm impressed.
You set me up. I mean, you did a softball pitch in there, and I couldn't help it.
You had to take it. I have all respect.
Todd wants to know if you are responsible for developing your own curriculum or if that's provided for you.
When I started with these guys, which has been about 18 months now, I think, or maybe not quite that long, they had an outline. I took it and built my own thing. And in actual fact, the stuff that I've built, and so I built a workbook based on the EasyWP guide, which is a guide that's available for new WordPress users. So I built a program based on that, and so I provide the workbook, and the CD guys are now using that in their other centers as well. So yeah, I cooked that up. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. If you're teaching somebody how to use WordPress, there's not a whole lot of deviation from what they need to know. Here's the dashboard, here's posts, here's pages, here's how it all works. But I just use some different resources to pull all that together.
Is that workbook available for sale, or is it only for your people who take your course?
It will be. It will be available for sale, and we'll probably get it up on the Easy Guide site at some point in the not too distant future. It's just a question of me making that happen. Me and the Easy Guide guy making that happen. Anthony, who's running that site. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have a theme that you created for the course. Have you created a starter theme that you kind of like to work with on all your projects, or are you customizing existing child themes? Yeah. What's your process?
So with the course, we don't do child theme stuff at all unless we start to get into advanced, when they are starting to want to have a little bit more control over the look. We actually start with 2012. So the process of the course is at the beginning of the day, we're setting up basically a restaurant website based on 2012, mostly because I felt like 2012 was the provided theme that actually looks more corporate than the others, and it's clean and easy to understand. And so we go through the day, and at the end of the day, we'll all have a little, restaurant website with a menu and using posts as news items and all this kind of stuff. And when we go into the advanced class, then we start looking at how we can actually customize that just a little bit. Though again, we're trying to make more advanced users, but advanced class isn't necessarily about customizing, though we do take them through the child theme point at that process. So in actual fact, in my training, I'm not usually using Genesis at all. We'll talk about premium themes that are out there, and of course I mention it because it's my hot favorite, but yeah, for the most part we're just teaching people admin stuff, so we don't do themes too much.
Okay. It's always a curiosity. We've gotten that question on the show a number of times about, whether when you're building out a when you're building out a site for a client, are you starting with totally from scratch, rolling your own, or starting with an existing child theme and kind of modifying it around? And everybody has their own process. Is kind of the
yeah, I mean, I have my own too, and what I do for a client build is going to vary. I mean, I'm always using Genesis for my own site. I use the sample theme and customize that quite extensively. For the last couple of sites we did one based on Metro, I think, and the other one, but again, and Agency, we've done a site on Agency. And so it's all going to depend on what the functionality that the client wants. And if there's an existing theme that will make that happen or make that easier, and if there isn't, well then I'll just start with sample or my version of sample that I've tweaked and go from there.
All right. Well, just a quick hello to, I know some folks joined in the podcast late, so welcome, you latecomers. We're glad that you made it. I'm chatting with Dee Teal, a.k.a. the Web Princess from Australia, but currently residing here in the States for a few weeks.
Yeah, 90 days. What's that? That's a few months, actually. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
We've got you for a while.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions for myself or Dee or general Genesis questions, you can tweet those to #GOHchat, and we'll get those answered for you on the air. And also wanted to thank our sponsors, our generous sponsors who enable me to provide these awesome well, I think they're awesome interviews. I could be biased, but thanks to Desktop Server and the Conductor plugin for underwriting this episode. And again, to be self-serving, if you ever knew somebody who might be interested in sponsoring, send them over to carriedills.com/sponsor. All right, let's dive back in it. We have a +1 from Kaylee on using the Easy WP guide for clients that don't know WordPress.
Awesome.
I've actually never heard of that, so I'm learning something new. So, Google, is it a place where you can publish your own content, or it's
a guide. Anthony Horton wrote a book basically to provide really easy access information about just the basics of running a WordPress site. What's a post? What's a page? What's the difference? How do you use them? How do I change the menu? And so he wrote the book. He wrote a book. It's had over 100,000 downloads now, I think. And and publishes all the content for free on the website. You can download an ebook for a few dollars donation, basically. Yeah, and I send all my clients there, which is probably contrary to sending them to the Codex, but to keep all the information really simple and straightforward, we send them there.
Sure. Well, the Codex is a little intimidating.
It can be hard to navigate.
The beginner or intermediate user.
I think the docs team would go, "Hey, we can help you with that. Come and help us, make it easier." I'm sure they would love to have people getting involved with that.
Absolutely.
I've just spent 2 days with the community guys doing contributions, so I'll give them a shout out. They've been working on docs all weekend, or Monday, Tuesday. It's been this week. I don't even know what day it is, but yeah, shout out to the community team.
Well, for everybody listening, WordCamp San Francisco was this past weekend, which they announced will be the last WordCamp San Francisco after 11 years running. They're going to do like a WordCamp USA location, date to be determined, just as an interesting side note. But after WordCamp, there was a 3-day community summit, and Dee, you were around for that. Can you kind of tell us what was going on?
Well, so Monday was the community summit where we got a bunch of where the foundation basically got a bunch of people together to talk about where things are at, and got all of the contribution teams like community, core, all of the areas that people can contribute into gathered around together to talk about issues and roadmap and directions and wish lists of all the kind of things that we would like to see happening within community, essentially. And there were contributors there from business and WordPress businesses and people from international, so people from the global community, like me and a couple of the other guys from Australia. There were heaps of people there all talking about future directions. And then the next 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, were contributor days. And so all of those teams were sitting down there going, okay, what are we going to work on? And so the community team was sitting down and working on documentation for WordCamps and how to make planning a WordCamp easier, and that's the team that I'm involved in community, and so we were looking at ways to make contributing to community easier. So there were a bunch of people working on core and a bunch of people working on meta and some of the stuff that supports all of those communities. So it was just 2 full-on days at the Automatic Lounge, just plowing in and getting stuff done. It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And for anybody that would like to be involved in contributing to WordPress, it's not just about contributing code. There are so many ways that you can be involved in supporting the community. And if you want more information, go to make.wordpress.org. And you can sign up to be in a specific area, whatever your area of interest is, and get email updates and team meeting updates and kind of stay in the loop.
Yeah. Very cool.
I sat in on Sunday. They had some contributor things going on, and I sat in with the theme review team and saw what the process is for approving a theme that is submitted to the .org repository. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And so I may partake on that. But then I also am really interested in the accessibility team, so I don't know. I might have to have my feet on both sides of the fence.
Accessibility team, I think, is going to be one of the next big. That and Polyglots, which is the language team. I think those are 2 teams that are amazing opportunities there. I think for people who go, hey, I want to niche some of what I'm doing, and I think I need to get into accessibility because there's more and more pressure, certainly in Australia. I presume things are probably going to start, or have started changing here as well, about legal requirements to make your sites accessible. And so the more people that know about that, the more people that are helping build that, I think the better off the whole community is. And certainly as WordPress pushes more and more into internationalization, getting involved in polyglots is going to be incredibly powerful and important as well.
I was chatting with Morten Rand Hendrickson, who is a great champion of the accessibility movement, but he mentioned what you just said, that I'd never, or I didn't realize that accessibility is actually a legal standard. in certain countries. So if you're doing business, not just a personal site, that your website has to meet accessibility standards.
Well, and certainly if you're doing that in Australia, if you're doing anything for government, if you're doing any governmental work, then you have to meet the criteria. You have to meet, and I don't know which standard it is. I'm not across it. I need to get across it. So if we're getting into that kind of government stuff, then you absolutely have to be across it and how to make your site accessible.
Well, I'm gonna be a devil's advocate a little bit here, because
let's see.
So there are some who would say that in order to make their website accessible and be required to do that by law, that is an undue burden on small businesses or entrepreneurs that don't necessarily have the big budgets to go revamp their website. What would you say to that?
I would say, for a start, find out what it would take and run your site through the text checks to see where. So there are sites out there that you can put your URL into and have a look and see where you do or don't meet requirements. I think for a lot of people, they may be surprised at how little may be required. I think even from a business perspective, I think people are completely unaware of how many people there are who use screen readers or keyboard-only navigation or any of those things, and the percentage of their audience or their market that they are excluding by doing that. I think for a lot of people, they may be surprised by that and actually what it can do for their business if they actually start thinking about including wider parts of the market. I mean, I don't know, and I didn't get a chance to tap to the team, and I wish I had, sit down and ask the questions, just how many people does this affect? Because I'm able-bodied, I don't have to think about those things from a personal level, and so it's easy to skate through and not think about it, but we have an audience and we need to be accommodating our whole audience, not just the same part of the audience that we would fit into.
I saw it was going around Twitter a few weeks ago, and I don't recall the link off the top of my head, but it was a demo of a guy trying to navigate a website, and he had a motor skill disability. I don't recall exactly what it was, but his extreme frustration at trying to, like a slider, say, the time it took him to see what he wanted to click on and then actually get there to click on it, the slide had already gone past. So just little things like that, and interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, gosh, the first and easiest thing to do, and one of the things that I'm doing when I'm training is just teaching people how to put alt tags that make sense on their images as they upload them. I mean, that's first basic stuff, which has an impact on accessibility.
We have a question from Ginger, and she wants to know about your staging and deployment. You mentioned earlier that you're using MAMP or WAMP, ZAMP, whatever.
Yep.
So have you ever used Desktop Server or heard of it?
I have, and I want to get more into it. I mean, I have a workflow with MAMP, and I've got MAMP Pro, so all of my host files are written with that, and I have used it, and I have a number of friends who use it say that it's fantastic. Because I had ZAMP.
Uh-oh. I believe that I've lost Dee. So for once on Genesis Office Hours, it's not me with the internet issues, it's my guest. I think this is a momentous occasion. So while we're waiting on Dee to rejoin us, well, it looks like, oh, hey, there she is. You were fast. Did you have an internet burp?
I think maybe I did. I'm in a co-working space at the moment, so that was a bit of a surprise. But okay, I'm back. What did I get up to? So I use MAMP Pro, and so that's writing on my host files. And I know that I tried to install Desktop Server before on a machine that I already had XAMPP installed, and it gave me some hiccups. So my plan is when I've got a clean install available is to actually chuck it in and really play with it, because I know a lot of the guys, certainly in the Genesis community that I've talked to, love it. So I'm really keen to give it a go. I just haven't got there yet.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic, and it's actually free. There's a premium version you can purchase, but yeah, check that out. And then about deployment. So when you're ready to, you're developing locally, and then when you get ready to deploy, are you using Beanstalk or just going all FTP on it, or what's your operandi?
That is all depends on the site. So I've used Backup Buddy for a really, really long time and was happy with that. I've used WP All-in-One migration recently, and I quite like that, except for the fact that you have to get the 2 sites built before you can actually use that. I don't know what Beanstalk is. I feel like I've just missed some epic thing, so I'll have to check that one out when I get offline. But I do and I've been doing more manual migrations with a script to do the search and replace database thing. It just depends on what kind of setup I've got available. So I've got a bunch of ways that I go around it, but most of it, for the longest time, it's been Backup Buddy. Just sort of exploring other options in the last couple of months around that.
Yeah, that's yet another area that everybody's got their own little flavor of how they...
We were at WordCamp Sydney. I was at WordCamp Sydney a month or 2 ago, and in one of the conversations, so we had this Q&A session. We kind of had this open-ended Q&A, and somebody introduced the topic of migration, and I think there was a different system for every developer that had anything to say, and we all think that the way that we do it is the right way, but so it got a bit interesting. But I mean, it's horses for courses. It's all going to depend on what the client's got and what's easy and what works and how big the site is and how much data there is to transfer.
I recently, as I've tried to get better about using version control for projects, I've started using Beanstalk. Right now I'm only using it on my own site.
Yeah.
But so my workflow is basically commit my code locally, then push it up to the repository on Beanstalk.
Yeah.
And I have it set to automatically then deploy to my host.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't do automatic deploy on any client sites because that's a recipe for
disaster, total disaster.
For busting something, but for my side, I don't care too much.
Yeah, so I'm using Git and I'm using Tower as my Git client. I'm not using Git for deployment too much. I'm just using that for version control at the moment. And I know that there is so much scope for doing stuff out there and getting Grunt involved and automating things. Again, it's all a question of time and how much time I want to invest on learning that before I actually start using it. I tend to find with learning new things is that I learn them as I have to do them rather than go looking for that information, teaching myself, and then not needing it. So I haven't needed to do that yet. So it's on my list. It's a very long list.
Hey, it's fun to always be in a state of learning.
Oh, that's the best part about it. It's what I love, why I love what we do, because there is this constant stream of new information.
And thank goodness I don't have to know it all. I can.
Yeah.
We had a question, interesting question from Neer. He wants to know, do you see any differences between the Australian market and the U.S. market in regards to WordPress solutions?
I don't know. What I'm familiar with is the Australian market. But a website's a website. It has to do what it has to do. It either has to sell or it has to get people through the door or it has to give people information. So because most of my clients know me in Australia, then all of that's my market. And so I don't have a huge number of clients in the US. I don't know if at the moment I've got any. So I don't really know how to answer that question other than it seems to me like a website's a website. I wonder if pricing would be different. That might be a difference between one and the other. I'd have to have a conversation with someone about what their pricing was to know that for sure. But I think we're delivering the same sorts of solutions to the same problems. So I don't imagine that it's very different. I'd love to know if other people have a different opinion about that.
We had a discussion at one point about costs, and when it comes to pricing your services, how pricing in the U.S. Can differ incredibly from prices that people can charge, say, in the UK or really anywhere in the world. Is the going rate, so to speak, equivalent in Australia?
So what's the going rate? There's so many variations, and I know that the pricing conversation has been a long-running one, and I've seen talked to a few people about pricing. My pricing has certainly gone up a lot in the last 12 months. I don't know if what I charge for a simple site customization. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite a bit higher than some of what other people are doing. And that's partly because I'm starting to get known in our circles, and people go, hey, we want the Web Princess to do it, and I've only got a limited amount of time. And so if they're prepared to pay for that, then they will. But again, I don't even necessarily have a set rate for what a site is, because a lot of what I'm pricing on is what the value is to the client. So if I say, hey, I'm doing a website for so-and-so and it's $1,800, Australian dollars, not US dollars, and then but I'm doing not a similar thing for someone else, but because of the kind of value that it's going to deliver to them, it's more expensive. So I might have an hourly rate, and I kind of loosely base things on that, but I'm getting more and more into here's a flat rate for a project, and it's based on this amount of value rather than it's going to take me so many hours, and my hourly rate is this, and therefore the value of a project that's this big, that many hours is this much. Sounds kind of really airy-fairy, I'm sorry.
No,
I don't know if that helps anybody.
I love that you're talking about pricing based on value as opposed to just flat rate, because you know, if you're charging an hourly rate, then you're kind of automatically at odds with your customer. They want you to get it done as fast as you can, and you want to take as long as you can. Yeah,
exactly. And I've only got so many hours in the week, and if I'm, you know, my hourly rate and I need to make a certain amount of money every week, I either have to up my hourly rate to be able to fit that into my hours, or I end up working all the hours God sends to actually make that happen, and I don't want to live like that. So we're pricing on value, and that's been a new innovation really, and I guess it's part of the reason that the value of my business has increased in the last 12 months, is making that kind of decision rather than being narrow to a finite number of hours that I have to fill, and getting screwed when I don't have enough work for all of those hours. So
yeah. Well, inquiring minds want to know, what is the weirdest project you've either done or been approached to do?
So the one that kind of raised my eyebrows the highest, I guess, was actually a training job. Now, this isn't for City Desktop. This was for a company that I worked for previously that has since gone bust, so I can't give you any information about them. But what we tended to see, or what happens sometimes in training, is that somebody will come in and say, hey, I need training because I want to do this and this and this with my website. But what they actually want is cheap development. So this particular person came in and she's like, hey, I'm really keen to learn how to do what I want for my website, and what I want to learn how to do was actually a ton of customizations to the site. So she was thinking, oh, I'll pay $500 or whatever for training for the day, and I will get all of this development. So she came in with these expectations, and as it happened, they didn't get met. But the website was a portal for strippers and pole dancers. So I'm sitting there going, okay, this is because she was, you know, setting up a resource for teaching them how to be better business people and how to leverage this short period of time that they were going to be able to be profitable in this particular market. So I'm sitting there going, okay, this is getting really, really interesting because of the content that I was looking at. But also, as it happens, she left halfway through the day completely frustrated because she wasn't getting what she needed, which was free, or, you know. So she went, kicked up a big stink, got her money back, and left. But it was disconcerting. I'll give it that.
All right. So I don't even know where to take it from there. I've never had.
I know.
Exotic dancing.
Yeah. It was awesome.
That too can be done with WordPress.
Oh, anything can, apparently.
Well, as we get towards the end of our interview here, the vendor actually prompted this question, but what's on tap for you in the Web Princess? Do you plan to stick with the training or focus more on development or new things?
Well, I guess part of the sort of traveling experiment that I'm doing at the moment is to spend a little bit of time, because I've got this gap when this next project is in design, and I'm not being heavily relied on for development for the next few weeks, is to actually sit down and think about that. I'm really keen to do some more training stuff, but the stuff that I really love doing is the development. So I think what I'm going to continue to do is keep the training as a kind of an adjunct, as a small amount of what I do, because I really do get a kick out of seeing people get involved in that. But the thing that's kind of been set on fire for me, and again, I'm not sure how to fit this into everything else that I'm already doing, particularly with the community stuff, is developing more women and girls into not only WordPress but into tech type fields. I had an experience at WordCamp Sydney where 3 young girls had come with their mum to WordCamp at my recommendation. They'd been like, hey Dee, we want mentorship, where can we go, what can we do? And I'm like, hey, come on down to WordCamp, which they did. And one of them got just completely turned on by code, and I showed her Code Academy to say, hey, experiment with this. Well, she spent the whole rest of that WordCamp just sitting there with their laptop, not listening to any of the talks because she was just so busy teaching herself to code. So I'm keen to kind of get more into that, and part of what's happening in the next couple of months will be me sitting down and working out what that looks like and whether that's profitable or whether that's volunteer time or how to make all of that work. But I'm going to continue being a developer. I'm going to continue pushing into more I can do with Genesis. That's the plan. That's what I love doing.
Awesome.
Thanks.
And is it a meetup or a mentorship group that you do with girls and women?
Yeah, it's a meetup. We tend to, when we will have a talk about something in web or design or SEO or whatever. We kind of set it up initially. We call it word checks. I'm not sure that people culturally, whether that's a good fit over here. Certainly works fine in Australia. So it's word checks, and we get together once a month and talk WordPress or talk websites. I was keen to see it become something that helped encourage women to get more confident with their ability to come to a meetup and speak to the wider group. So we're part of the bigger Melbourne WordPress community, and we have a lot of crossover, a lot of people coming and going in between sort of both groups. It's not strictly women. We do have men come along. They are certainly most welcome to attend. And yeah, and again, we'll be over the next coming months looking at what we do with that next year and how that works. But actually having a place where women go, hey, you know, I can come in here and talk about this, and being nerdy is actually not all that weird. It's kind of fun. So we explore that a little bit once a month. It's good fun.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask you one parting question,
Sure.
And that is, do you have any tools, books, anything in your toolbox that you've discovered recently that has been a big help to you? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, okay. Not off the top of my head. I've got the plugin developer's guide. I don't even know if that's what it's called, the big red book at home on my shelf that I'm like, I really need to get into that I haven't got into, so I'd like to spend some more time in that. But yeah, I mean, Google is my best friend. So every time I'm trying to figure something out or try and learn something new, then I'm, Googling it. And as often as not, I'll end up on your website or somebody else's website and go, oh, there's the answer to that particular question. So, I mean, yeah, my biggest tool and resource is Google and the WordPress community. So I can ask people directly and go, hey, how do I do this? Or how can we take this to the next level? And that's not actually always tech support. As often as not, that's business support as well. Just asking what other people are doing and leveraging that.
Well, I've got to agree with you that Google is probably the best tool for
how to be a web developer. Ask Google.
Yes. Well, Dee, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you today. Where can listeners find you online to say howdy?
Sure. Thewebprincess.com is my website. Twitter is The Web Princess. In fact, Google The Web Princess and you'll pretty much find me. There's not too many of us around, so that's it, thewebprincess.com.
All right, sweet. Well, I'd like to mention our sponsors one more time. If you want to check out the Conductor plugin and a special message just for Genesis users, go to conductorplugin.com/CarrieRocks. And I did not make that URL up. And then if you want to check out Desktop Server, go to carriedeals.com/desktop server. And you can get a coupon code there. So thanks everybody who sent in your questions. Appreciate you watching and tuning in to Genesis Office Hours. And we will see you next week. So long.
Thank you.